Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sensibly Cynical podcast. My name is Sean, and today's guest is TJ Hodder. He is the host of The Hodder Show, which is a podcast similar to mine as he interviews musicians, content creators, and dynamic personalities. You can check out The Hodder Show wherever you get your podcasts right now. So here it is, my interview with TJ Hodder of The Hodder Show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have a huge treat for you this evening. Joining me now, the host of The Hodder Show, TJ Hodder. What's going on, man?
What's up, Sean? It's great to be here, man. I'm honored to be on the show, brother.
Yeah, so before we begin, you are both sensible and cynical, correct?
I have my moments.
Well, if you had to pick one, sensible or cynical, which one would you be?
Probably a little more. I think I lean more towards sensible for the most part, but depending on who you ask, I'm pretty cynical too.
Yeah. So yeah, man, talk about first off, talk about your show and how did it all start? So
it's interesting for me, man. Like the real quick, the more that I'm thinking about it, I think I got to go with cynical. The more that I think about it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah,
being honest.
Do a little U-turn.
Yeah. Depending on the day, let's go with cynical today, though. But so for me, my whole podcast journey started kind of by accident. I was going to be a part of a YouTube series with a friend of mine who was going to he did like wrestling videos where he did like reviews and things of that nature.
Yeah.
For a while, they like were huge wrestling fans, and I was going to be a part of it. And I had always joked around about doing a podcast because my background is I used to work in a music store. So I'd talk with bands and I'd basically interview bands in the store, just like having a conversation with them, right? I'd ask them all these questions and they'd be like, dude, you're like interviewing us. Like, cause I was so interested in it, right?
Yeah.
So I always threatened that I was going to do something like a podcast. And one day I was supposed to go to my buddy's place to start recording these videos. I was going to do like a segment on his show. He had to cancel as things come up in life. And I was like, man, I feel so creative tonight. And I was firing on all cylinders and I'm sitting in this room alone. I am just like sitting there and I'm like, I'm so creative right now. And I have this podcast thing, man. If I did a podcast, I could call it a hodcast. And then I laughed hysterically for 5 minutes because I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever thought of. So I went and luckily I had a microphone and a little interface thing from my iPod Touch that I had rocking back then.
Yeah.
And I recorded the first episode. Couldn't even edit it because I didn't even own a computer at the time.
Yeah.
I just basically edited it on GarageBand on my iPod and threw it up, and the rest is kind of history. Here we are 6 years and 300 episodes later.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, man, our podcasts are kind of similar.
Yes. Well, and you've been slugging it out for a while too. It was like like mid 2017 you started out?
Yeah, well, there's a long story. Obviously everyone's probably heard it before, but so I used to have a co-host. His name was Frank Jag, and we were friends. How about we leave it at that? I guess I have nothing personal against the guy. It's just, sometimes it's just like in relationships, friends disappear or not disappear. That's a little harsh, but
people grow apart in life sometimes.
Yeah. But anyways, so he didn't care enough and I cared too much. And, and then there you go. And then I kept it going. So it used to be like, we used to have a topic. It used to be like where he would shoot the shit and then I would be cynical. He would think he was sensible. That's how it all started.
Right.
And then I was like, screw it. Our best downloads were interviews. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to turn this into an interview show. And I've been going just me 2018, 19, something like that. Interesting, man, about podcasting as well, man. I tell people, I have certain friends that are thinking about getting into the podcast or thinking about joining the other 2 million podcasts. But the first thing I tell them is to get the app, get the podcast through on Apple. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, at one point, I think more nowadays there's certain services that are a little more popular than Apple, I would say. But I've never been an Apple guy. Like I've haven't owned an iPhone in years, so but Apple definitely, a lot of things go through Apple.
Yeah,
so a lot of your podcast apps, like your podcatcher apps, stuff like Antenna Pod, Podcast Addict, there's
Podchaser goes through it, I think.
Yeah, the actual thing, Podchaser does. There's if you go on and type in podcast app on your iPhone or your Android or whatever, there's going to be about 30 apps that pop up, and most of them use the iTunes feed, and that's how they pull their podcasts off and put them on their apps, which is whatever, it works. But for me personally, I found that Apple's fantastic, and that's what a lot of podcast charts and stuff like that use, which is great if your listeners listen on Apple. But if they don't, if they're like me and most of mine are on Spotify, my show basically doesn't exist on the podcast charts because I'm not on Apple. I shouldn't say it doesn't exist.
Mine's
fair,
opposite. Mine's Apple's most of my downloads. I would
yes,
say
you're on Podbean, right?
Right. I would say 40 a solid 40% are Apple. Without Apple, I mean,
it's
I'm not sensible or cynical.
You're just out in the void, man. Well, that's
I'm just there.
Right. I've been using Anchor now for a couple of years, and Anchor is a Spotify company. And Anchor saved my podcast. So I have nothing but love. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not a big Anchor guy. But I get why people do it. I get it.
Oh yeah. I talk with new podcasters a lot, as I'm sure you do as well, being around as long as you have, there's almost could be a whole podcast on just what to do and what not to do. I always say to people, I can't give you advice on how to have a super successful podcast because I'm really happy with where I'm at and where I've always been at because it's fun and it's, it's my hobby. But hey TJ, how do I have a successful podcast where I make millions of dollars? Well, I can't help you there, but here's a bunch of mistakes I made over the last 6 years that I'm going to tell you not to do so that you don't make those mistakes.
Right. And I'm so envious of celebrities who just come on and they can hire people to do it for them. And I'm like, man, because getting downloads are ups and down, and of course, as as an interviewer, it kind of depends on the guest.
Yes, and the thing is, let's
call a spade a spade.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. If you're that's one thing I've always been very mindful of. I have people on my show that I want to talk to. I haven't really made that jump to be I'm going to try and have on all these famous people because I want to get downloads, because in my experiences, some of my best episodes I've ever had download wise was just me hanging with a buddy.
It's subject matter.
It's word of mouth, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all subject matter. I see some podcasts that they'll start out and they'll start having on all these, quote unquote famous people, and they'll last for 13 or 14 episodes because they're like, well, I'm not famous yet. It's well, man. Not every famous person you have on is going to share the product, right? That's the biggest thing is anytime I've reached out to a publicist or whatever, it's I always ask, if I have this person on, are they going to, can I get a little promotion out of this? And they're just kind of nah. I'm well, then what's the point? Unless I'm having on Kanye West, no one gives a shit.
Or Will Smith.
Yeah. Will, what happened? Come on, talk to me. It's your buddy TJ. Come on, man.
Yeah. It's my friend Chris. What's going on, Chris?
What's up, buddy? Come on, man. Come on the show. Let's talk. Unless you're getting into that kind of stuff as a new podcaster, if you don't already have a following, it is really tricky. And I have a lot of respect for people who make that jump, who start off as literally no one and make that jump.
Organically, But let's talk specifically about the Hodder show. You said 2016. So how did you come up with the theme, and what's your most memorable episode, like from early on?
Oh, geez. Well, as far as the theme of the show, it's always been just I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of interests, right? But music has always been my big thing. So if anyone asks what my podcast is, I always say it's like I'm sitting down with my guest and we're just having a coffee or we're having a beer. That's how I do I used to be a little more prepared as an interview. Yeah, right. Cheers. I'm actually having a nice refreshing Diet Coke right now.
I'm having coffee. I'm coffee.
Right on. But yeah, like I used to be a little bit more like of a professional interviewer sometimes, but I found that, you know what, like that's not fun for me. And if I have someone on and I'm asking them questions that, like someone who's doing like a 10-minute interview, right? We're having a long form conversation. Let's both get something out of this conversation, right? That's how this should be. And that's more fun for everybody involved. I think anyway, that's the content I like. So it's always been, the way I've always treated it is like when I'm back at the store talking with these bands. Oh, so like, hey man, like who do you like? Who's some of your favorite, who's some of your influences? What's the first music you ever heard? Like, or if I'm talking to a podcaster, like what's the podcast that got you into the game? Like, you know, what was the episode you did where you knew, okay, I want to do this.
That's what I just asked.
Right? Exactly. Right. Yeah. So it's like, and that's what's so fun about this for me is like, cause I'm not usually on the other end of things. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, that's really the theme. But like overall, I used to do a lot of wrestling as well back in the day too. And I mean, I've dabbled in paranormal conspiracy theory type stuff. I've done a little bit of like horror story narration. I do a little bit of relationship talk sometimes. Like,
you got one episode for someone that's like new to the show that you would point them to?
Jeez. That is a very difficult question to
just
answer.
Pick one. Just like eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Well, probably most recently, like the last year and a bit, my favorite episode I think I've done, because I have so much respect for the guys, I had a chat with Jason Wilson from the Grey Rooms, which is a phenomenal horror audio drama podcast. And that was a lot of fun because I was allowed to just be very free flowing, and he's a professional, but we were also both kind of drunk. So it was just a really,
I've been there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, it was a really fun chat for sure.
What do you like most about podcasting? Like, what's the number one thing that keeps you going?
It's the freedom with a lot of podcasts, right? Like I can come on this podcast and I can do whatever I want with it. I can have any kind of a creative outlet that I want. If I want to have someone on for an interview, I can do that. If I want to come on and rant about something, I can do that. If I want to come on and just be a goofy idiot for an hour, I can do that. Like, you know, what this podcast has really become for me is just a really fun outlet, right? And I can do whatever I want with it. And it can get tricky sometimes. Like I've been going, you know, like for yourself, like I'm going for 6 years and I haven't really had any downtime except for 1 month where I was moving, so I had to stop doing the podcast.
I really haven't either. I really haven't either. Like, I think, like, if I get tired, like, I'll just stop for 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. And it's good that you have that attitude too, because like I'm like that now. Like if something happens and I can't have an episode for the week, I don't like. I used to get so stressed out about it. Yeah, like I used to get so. I had another podcast before that was on Podbean. That's why I'm so familiar with Podbean. And I had a co-host, and like it hurt that show because I was so like, I'd freak out.
Well, and then.
Inconsistencies. Yeah. Like I'd freak out and then, you know, like, oh, well, we can't take a week off because then our bar's going to do this. Right. Like, and it's just like, dude, like, it doesn't matter. Like your hardcore fan base, the people who are listening every single week and that are supporting you, they're going to go, oh, there's no episode of the show this week. Oh, okay, cool. Like, and they're going to come back next week. Right. They're not going to care.
Yeah. You know? The really good ones are the oones that download it immediately when it releases. Like their number pops up right away. Those are the ones that they don't care because they download it upon release.
Or they have it for like set for like automatic download or something.
Yeah,
like,
that's like hardcore
it's,
stuff. Yeah. It's like it's Joe Rogan or something, you know?
Yeah. They're like, I'm not going to miss this one.
Also, I did a promotional song for this, and you're a Stain guy?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that I was, as much as I was excited about this because, you know, like I said, I kind of been following your podcast from afar for a long time, so it was cool to kind of finally link up. Like when you shared the logo and everything and the hype up for it, and you put on, especially price to play because 14 Shades of Grey is like, I don't know if it's my favorite Stain record, but it's pretty damn close. Like I love that record and that song. So I
you were all
freaked
hyped
out.
You were like hype, man.
I was like,
man.
dude.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I know we've been following each other for a long time. This is a long time coming. Who do you think like is the greatest bassist of all time? Like, do you have a guy who's like he can be in any band, he can do anything?
For bassist,
like could be
honestly.
Anybody,
well, one guy who I mean he's part of my favorite band, but he really kind of already has done that, which is a bass player by the name of Mike Inez, who is the bassist for Alice in Chains. But he also played for Ozzy's band for a long time. He was a studio guy for a long time. Mm-hmm. He's a rock bass player, obviously, you know, but he can really he can play anything, man. There's a few bass players I like that are like that. Another guy who is super, super underrated as a bass player. And some people might laugh when I say this, but Robbie Merrill, who's the bass player for Godsmack.
Okay, I saw Godsmack live once.
He is another one of my top 5 bands. And, you know, with Godsmack, the bass stuff is very generic and basic because it has to be for that kind of music. Yeah. But Robbie is like jazz fusion level bass player. Like he just like, and his talent goes way beyond what Godsmack calls for. And he's someone who like, anytime someone brings up bassist, I'm like, yo, like he's one guy who always you got to give him credit.
So yeah, man, I grew up with like, my first concert, I'll never forget it. My first concert when I was 16 was Disturbed at the local Amway Center in Orlando, like where Disney is and everything. Mm-hmm. And we were doing shots in the at 16. I was doing shots of Jack in my garage. So at 16, mind you, I'm like this 16-year-old virgin. Like, what the fuck am I saying? You know.
So what era of Disturbed was that? Was that like when
10,000 fists in the air?
Okay, so right. So that was. yeah, that was my record when I was 16 too. Actually, their record too. So like I think that's got to be my favorite Disturbed record because Disturbed's another band that like I love.
Yeah, an underrated song on that is Just Stop. Like people busting my chops because of that song, but that's a great song. My friend was like, of all the songs, like the eighth on their album, like
it's like really that song. Well, it's okay. I think one of my favorite songs off that record is "Sons of Plunder." So there you go.
Oh yeah.
So
So you got a Mount Rushmore of bands. I know you mentioned a few. Do you got ones that you're like they're like gods to you? You know,
the first and foremost always is Alice in Chains. I am a huge Alice in Chains changed my life. I didn't know music could sound like that. A rapid fire a few that I gotta throw on there. It changed the positions may change daily, but we got Nickelback, Godsmack, Seether, Stained.
Oh wow! I've seen a lot of those because I went a couple outdoor festivals.
Right on, especially that era. Like my favorite era of music is kind of that late 90s, early 2000s scene of kind of hard rock, new metal, the stuff everyone hates on now for some reason. Like that's my shit. I love that stuff.
And then were you into the pop punk? Like the Blink-182,
I missed Glory,
that.
I am now. As I've gotten older, like I've friends with a lot of punk and pop punk bands who grew up with that stuff. So I have a deep appreciation of it now as when I'm older. But like back in the day, like of course, I mean, look,
Blink-182. I mean, everyone's heard of them.
182, of course. Like I like Blink-182, and obviously being Canadian, Simple Plan, Sum 41, like
I forgot about Simple Plan.
Yeah.
I forgot
Dude,
about
Simple Plan, I got back into Simple Plan again like pretty recently. And I'm like, shit, they got hits, man. Like just you look at they're like, oh, they had one hit, and it's like, no, they had a lot of hits.
Yeah.
And like people are like, oh, they fell off the earth. And I'm like, no, not really. They still had like platinum records.
Man. And then
just, you know.
Yeah, I also got into of course I'm like R&B and rap, but like if we're talking about rock music, I did get into kind of like the emo gothic stuff. Like one of my favorite bands, I think they're underrated. Tell me if you think so. Bullet for My Valentine. They are underrated as fuck. They are.
They're one of those bands. They're one of those bands that has evolved in a really cool way too. Because like you look at the first record compared to Scream Aim Fire, where they were kind of trying to figure out where they were going from the Tears Don't Fall. You know,
that's my favorite song. I love that song.
Don't get me wrong. I love that. I rock that song just as hard as anybody when it comes on.
I like Almost Orgasmed when I saw them live, bro. I'm like, bro. Hold me. I'm about to go.
Hold me, bro.
I'm like, tears don't fall. Oh! They crash around me. Yeah, it's like fucking awesome, bro.
What is that? Oh shit. There's 3 major hits off that record. All these things I hate revolve around me. Is that the title of the song?
I believe so. I'm one of those like I think they're great, but I'm not good with like
title guy. Yeah,
guy. Like if I hear the song,
I gotta look it up now. It's gonna bug me if I don't look it up.
I'm also like into weird like rock bands like kind of pop punk, but Paramore. Right on. I like Paramore. Is it Haley Williams? Is that the lead singer?
Haley Williams. Yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She was voted like hottest chick in rock for like the last 15 years or something like that. Like, and she's like super talented, right on. Like,
well, I talked about that with Boy Stick. I think the hottest singer of all time is Shania Twain. No, like Shania Twain. You know who that is, right?
Of course. So what? Wait, did he say no to that? I don't remember.
No.
Did he say no to that?
No. It's an obvious. But people that don't say Shania Twain, they don't know who she was. I'm talking about like 1990s Shania Twain.
Of course.
Like in 1994, she was the hottest woman in the world. Like period.
I don't think many people would argue that.
Now when she got older, then it's obviously she goes back down. But like, and obviously this is subjective. But to me, man,
listen, she's still the one you love, all right?
Yeah. Yeah. She was like fucking awesome, bro. But no, man, this is cool.
And it was just real quick. It was All These Things I Hate Revolve Around Me was the name of that one song I was talking about from Bullet.
There you go, man.
That
You're
song
the music
comes
guru.
on. It's over.
You're like fuck sports. I'm all about music. Give me all the music.
Music and podcasting, dude. That's it. That's all I'm into.
What's it about music that you like so much? Is it like because it depends on your mood? Like it's just whatever. It's so universal. Music, it doesn't matter on like language. Someone in Japan can listen to Blink 182 and feel the same as Bumfuck Nowhere. In the United States.
Yeah, it's for me like music was the first thing I had that when I was younger that gave a voice to things that I was feeling that I couldn't express. And for me, it was really my first love, a deep love of music, of just sitting with headphones on, doing nothing else but listening to music and like, really taking in everything. And it can give words to a feeling sometime that you maybe you don't know how to express. And anytime I've been very fortunate that anytime I've gone through hardship in my life, I've always had either an album or a band or a handful of songs that just, puts feelings into words. And it's just like, wow, like music is so powerful. And there's actually a sign I have behind me on my wall for those who can't see. I don't know if you can see that, Sean. I think where words fail, music speaks. And that's pretty much sums up what I'm trying to say. Like just you can you could be in the worst fight with your girl in the world or whatever. And like sometimes, yes, obviously it goes both ways where you could listen to something angry and it gets that emotion out, right? Like I'm a big metal fan as well. And like, it wasn't until I got older and kind of went through some shit that I understood what metal was. It's like, oh, he's not literally saying walk with me in hell, meaning we're going to go to hell and walk through it.
Right.
It's, oh no, he means like, hey man, take hold of my hand, for you are no longer alone. Walk with me in hell. Hey man, we're both going through some shit. Yeah. Let's pull each other up and fucking rage through this. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like it's a metaphor. And then my life was changed forever.
Autotune's gotten into rock music, right? I mean, it's everywhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think nowadays it's, there's a lot of talented people out there who, you know, you might have someone who's a really talented writer and who is really great at writing melodies.
Right.
But their voice, like the tone of their voice isn't great all the time. So if you use a little bit of auto-tune to clean that up live, I don't see a problem with it anymore. I think a lot of people that, and I have this conversation with like professional musicians,
right?
And they always say the same thing to me. They're like, dude, like pretty much everyone uses a little bit nowadays, like a little bit. I'm not talking like in order to hit a high note, you need auto-tune. I'm talking like, hey, I'm having a rough night. Can we just clean it up a little bit? It's just cleaning things up, right? Like, sure. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if you're relying on it for your performance and you need it, it's like, should you maybe rethink it? I mean, I if you asked me that question 10 years ago, I'd have a totally different response.
Always blame T-Pain. That's what people do. Always blame. Once I'm Sprung came out and I'm in love with the stripper,
it was over.
Yeah, it was a wrap after that. I mean,
but what's funny about that too is T-Pain can sing his ass off.
He can.
Have you heard?
But after he's no longer with us, he'll always be known as the auto-tune guy.
The auto-tune guy.
So what do you see the future of the podcast, man? Do you see yourself like changing the theme, or do you like where you're at? Talk about the future of the show.
As far as for me, I'm going to keep doing my thing. I mean, I've been doing the show the way I have been for the last 6 years. At this point, I'm kind of like, why change anything now? You know, some professionals have given me the advice of like, hey, stick with one avenue. Like only do one type of interview, you know, find your niche and stick with it. And I'm like, that's really good advice, but I'd get really bored of that really quick. And then it's work. And I don't want to do that. So this podcast for me, it's something I enjoy doing. It's an outlet. It's a hobby. And that's how I look at it. Like I treat my podcast as a brand and as a business because you kind of have to in this game. But you know, I'm going to keep doing my thing. I'm going to keep interviewing people that I think either deserve some kind of a spotlight, whether it's a local band that has never done an interview before, or it's a content creator, or something of that nature. But also like, you know, there's projects I have in the works right now that I would love to, you know, not take time away from the Hodder show, because it's always gonna be my main thing. But like, you know, I've done other podcasts in the past as well. So like, I've always branched out to do different things. And the thing I got cooking right now, probably going to launch next year, is going to be very different from what I do. So I'm excited about that. I do a little bit of horror story writing on Reddit too. So like I have a lot of little creative outlets. So it can be crazy sometimes to keep things focused.
Yeah.
And that's my podcast. I have all these interests, so I talk about a lot of different stuff. But
right, sure, makes sense.
That's kind of what we're gonna keep doing going forward. Is just keep slugging it out, and 10 years from now, I'll be like, right on. I'll be on like episode 3000 and be like, holy shit, I just broke 1,000 downloads again. Woo!
I know, I know, man.
I was told at one point by someone on air, and I wish I could remember the episode because I've talked about it enough. I'm gonna have to like go back and listen through and find it. But someone said to me once, dude, you're like the Joe Rogan of Ontario. And at the time, I was not a fan of Joe Rogan's podcast for whatever fucking reason. I didn't understand his show. And they said that to me, and like I brushed it off because I was kind of like, you know. And then now looking back, I'm like, that's a hell of a compliment. You know what I mean? Like, and then I heard Joe Rogan's interview with James Hetfield from Metallica, and I listened to an hour of James Hetfield and Joe Rogan talking about beekeeping. And I went, oh, I get it now. Like, it just clicked for me. And then I was like, okay, yeah, there's a reason Joe Rogan's podcast is the biggest podcast.
Numero uno.
Yeah, it's number one. Make no mistake about it. Like, some people say, yo, man, Logan Paul's coming for... It's like, no, he's not. He's not even in the same conversation. So,
but man, this has been fun, bro. I appreciate you coming on, man. This is good.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate the invite on, man.
Just bullshitting around, man.
Oh yeah, brother. That's what it's all about.
All right, man. Well, where can people find the Hodder Show?
All social media accounts are The Hodder Show. HODDER is how to spell Hodder. The is THE. Show is SHOW. A little bit of bad humor there for you. Any podcast app you can find me on. I'm on all of them. I just got on Audible too. So if for some reason you're looking for podcasts on Audible, I'm on there. And Amazon Music podcast app. I'm pretty much on everything. So check it out. Right, I appreciate it, y'all.
Yeah, man. This has been fun, bro.
Thank you so much, Sean. I seriously appreciate it, man.
There you go. Another episode in the books. Once again, I would like to thank TJ for coming on the podcast today. And I would like to thank you for listening to another episode of the Sensibly Cynical podcast. Check us out on Twitter at Cynical Sensibly, Instagram Sensibly Cynical Pod, and check out our Facebook group. Also, we are on WordPress. Check out our coffee mugs on Bonfire. All of our links are available on our link tree in the Instagram bio. Coming up next on the podcast, I am set to be joined by the guys over at Arsenic Culture. They tell you where to track down hard to find items. Excited for this one. I'm a collector of sorts, well, cards and such, so it'll be interesting to expand my horizons of sorts. All right, until then, please stay safe and take care.